Hey guys. My last video about Mizzou did much better than my videos normally do, and a bunch of people in the comment section said, I'm sending my kid to college soon, or I'm going to college in a few years. What do? I don't want to get a worthless education, I don't want to be propagandized, and I don't want to compromise my future by getting into an insurmountable amount of debt. I want to offer some alternatives if you're sure that you want to go to college and you aren't certain that you want to major in something specific. If you have a specialized career in mind, I'm not really sure that this is going to apply to you. For these fields like STEM, medicine, etc., you will still have the highest lifetime earnings going to the best university programs. Of course, if you want to start your own business and have a clear vision of what that's going to look like, maybe college isn't for you at all. Same thing with going into a trade, many of which offer very high lifetime earnings and reliable employment options. You also learn a tangible skill. I am conflicted about giving this advice because I think that a college education is becoming increasingly unnecessary for lifetime success. I'm merely making this video because I know there is a large population of students that cannot stomach not going to college because they're afraid that they won't get a job. And they might not. Every job I've had before this one has ruled out all applicants that do not have an undergraduate degree. And for many of these students, they may not be certain about their career path and want to explore their opportunities in a college setting. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I've learned more from Stefan Molyneux than from any professor I've ever had. If it is just about education for you, I'm very confident that you can take that upon yourself without going to college and getting buried in debt. Even the low-cost universities that I mentioned today cost about $60,000 for an undergraduate degree without a scholarship. And I should mention, although I am biased about this and would never recommend it, I do know a few people who went to college and enlisted in the Army, the Marine Corps, whatever, in their mid-20s, but wished later that they had enlisted right out of high school. They typically say that they learned very little at university anyway and wish that they had more mandatory institutional structure at a younger age in preparation for adulthood. I think that most high school students have a good understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, but want more reassurance before choosing a career path. Community college is a good option for reducing the burden of student loans while finding the most realistic and fitting long-term career strategy. But like I did, for better or worse, most people just want to jump right into college. So a good place to start is to ask yourself or your child, what do you want out of your college education? Of course, you want to be prepared for your career in terms of developing work-related skill sets. But outside of that, how important is it to you to develop a sense of self, or to learn about Western civilization, or to improve your ability to interact with others, to debate and assess new ideas? I reviewed lists of more conservative schools that seem to have a Western focus and noted those with reasonable proportions of students to administrators. If you watched my last video, you know that University of Missouri has 13,000 administrators and a student body of around 30,000. This is indicative of a lot of waste and unnecessary departments, so I avoided universities with similar problems. I factored in things like size, campus culture, alumni achievements, student reviews, curriculum, quality of faculty. It wasn't a super scientific process. I just tried to think about what I would want in a school if I did it all over again. Once again, I will say that even the lower cost options that I've included are pretty expensive. As far as public schools go, the one that I was seeing over and over in all of the ranking lists and reviews was Texas A&M. They have a top engineering and business undergraduate program, which is good for conservative-minded individuals that may know they have aptitude for math or economics, but they haven't yet chosen a discipline. It is a very large school and has a total undergraduate enrollment of around 59,000. It isn't exclusively academically oriented, like most public universities, and although it does boast a very good value, there is a built-in expense for financing athletics. Its in-state tuition is around $10,000. Its out-of-state tuition is around $29,000. So if you don't live in Texas, in tuition alone over the course of a normal undergraduate period, you may accrue in excess of $115,000 in debt. It may be a good option if you're ready to declare a business or engineering major right out of high school or after your freshman year, and if you feel like you have a promising and reliably high starting salary. It might also be a good option if you live in Texas or if you're really set on having the full college experience with fraternities, tailgating, sports, etc. The student-faculty ratio is 20-1. The most popular majors are business, management, marketing, engineering, agriculture, and biomedical sciences. The average freshman retention rate is 91%. That all checks out well, healthy student-to-faculty ratio, and the core of the academic programs are not invented. They're solid fields that produce actual value, so there will be less room for academics to politicize the subject matter. As far as private universities of medium or large size, I have to admit that Brigham Young University ranks very high in all the categories that I looked at, but it only gets honorable mention because I would imagine that it would be very difficult to go there if you're not Mormon, and it probably doesn't have a very broad appeal. So for the purpose of speaking to a wider audience, my suggestion here based on the research that I did, is to look into Notre Dame. You'll have to get really high grades and have a good SAT or ACT score, though. Notre Dame is a private Catholic research university in Indiana. Its undergraduate enrollment is around 8,500, around 12,000 with grad students, so it's pretty small. There is a large sports element, but there is no Greek life on campus. The student-faculty ratio is 10-1. The most popular majors are finance, accounting, economics, poli-sci, government, psych. Some of those are fluff, but for the most part, they are math and business oriented. I'm sure there are some leftist professors, but the school also benefits from being situated in a pretty conservative state. The biggest drawback is going to be cost. Tuition is going to run you around $50,000 a year without room and board, and that to me seems astronomically expensive. It's not something that I would do without a very solid plan for my career or a lot of assurance that I was going to have a high starting salary in a sustainable field. But the reality of this type of private education, which is of very high quality and has notoriety, is that it's probably going to cost you. 3.3 out of 5 students self-identify as conservative, which I think is high enough, but the real reason to go here is if you want to get a distinctly Catholic education. There seems to be a strong sense of community and probably mutual expectations between students, which is likely the reason that they have one of the highest graduation rates in the country. So if you can afford it, or you're very confident in your ability to pay a large student loan because you're going to be in a high-earning field, or if it's really important to you to get a Catholic education, this might be a good option. If you or your kid is hell-bent on going to liberal arts college, I was surprised to see that there are many options that will actually provide what a college education is supposed to, the ability to reason. In every one of the student and institution ranking lists that I read, I saw Hillsdale College. According to the New York Times, this school is something of a secret amongst conservatives. Hillsdale, a private college of 1,400 students in southern Michigan that describes itself as non-sectarian Christian and dedicated to civil and religious liberty, is scarcely known in many circles, but among erudite conservatives, it is considered a hidden gem. Its tuition and fees are around $25,000. The student-to-faculty ratio is 10-1. The most popular majors are history, English and lit, economics, poli-sci, government, finance. The average freshman retention rate is 96%. Okay, so it's probably going to run you around $100,000 and you will likely have an insignificant earning potential. But if you get any scholarships or financial help, you could take out a relatively modest loan, and this may be a good investment in your future if you feel like government K-12 public education has taught you nothing about Western civilization and you want a solid education filled with discussions of our foundational values, government structure, and our history. An undergraduate degree here might be excellent preparation for law or politics. They do have sports and Greek life, but it's not a huge part of campus life. Most of the campus efforts are concentrated on a rigorous core curriculum that's rooted in Western traditions. It requires all students, regardless of major, to take a class on the Constitution, as well as classes on Western heritage and American heritage. These may not be helpful suggestions if you are very concerned with keeping costs low, which is how I ended up going to Mizzou. So I compiled a few options for lower cost educations, but there is such tremendous tuition and student loan inflation that this was really difficult. Regent University, a private Christian conservative university in Virginia Beach, they have a mid-sized student body of about 4,800, but that's a bit misleading because they do have a large online presence. The student-to-faculty ratio is 19-1, and tuition is going to run you about $16,000 per year. Regent does operate through a biblical perspective, but their coursework focuses on smaller government, strong national defense, free enterprise, and traditional values. They have an accomplished list of alumni, and they have many conservative clubs and organizations to join on campus. This is a good low-cost option if you want some flexibility to do coursework online without compromising the integrity of your education. Harding University gets honorable mention here. It's slightly larger with a student body of around 7,100, but it is similar in that an undergraduate liberal arts education requires students to develop reasoning skills through the lens of the Western canon. It's a little bit more expensive, and tuition costs around $17,800 per year. If none of these suggestions is helpful or you've ruled them out for practical reasons, it might be more helpful to look for certain red flags to know if a school that you're already considering might actually be offering you a worthless degree because of their mounting social justice initiative. Like I discussed earlier and in my video about Mizzou, the number of administrators to students is very important. I am not sure that small class size is very relevant in a college setting, especially in lecture halls, but if it is a school that has one professor who gives a lecture to a giant lecture hall filled with students, yet there are half as many administrators as there are students, like at Mizzou, you know that tuition dollars are being squandered to sustain positions that needn't have ever been created. A school with this many administrators surely has layer upon layer of bureaucracy, and the curriculum and quality of professor will be compromised. Other things to look at. Is there a diversity initiative? Do they have a diversity officer? Does their website discuss diversity, inclusion, racial, or sexual awareness? Do they have what appears to be an excessive number of extracurricular activities, clubs, groups, whatever, geared towards feminism or multiculturalism or globalism? Another good way to look into the agenda of a school is to check out their newspaper or journal. This usually gets right to the heart of the commonly held beliefs of the student body. Similarly, reading faculty publications will let you know the agenda of your professors. I took to Twitter because I wanted some feedback about this in case I was missing anything important. I said, what is the best indicator that a college is going to indoctrinate you? Trademarks of evergreen, etc. I got some really helpful answers that I had overlooked. Matt, my podcast co-host, said, diversity and sensitivity training. That is certainly true. If this is a part of the orientation or is mandatory, I can almost guarantee that you're going to be facing an uphill battle for the remainder of your education. Stan Konopka said, the influx of safe spaces, i.e. segregation, administration bowing to students. That is also true. We've seen this at Evergreen, DePaul, Mizzou, and this will be the hallmark of universities that fall in the future. Peterson recommends looking at course descriptions and searching for language that indicates postmodern ideology. That one was very helpful. How big is their women's studies, black studies, peace studies, those kinds of departments? All of that represents resources that are diverted from more worthwhile core studies. So I hope that helps some. I don't envy the position of high school students right now. I can't recommend that people don't go to college because it's still an entry requirement for the vast majority of corporate jobs. That being said, I understand why people don't go, especially if they have an entrepreneurial spirit. And if I'm being honest, I also can't advise somebody to get into debt without a solid promise of immediate earning potential. That is especially true of all of the liberal arts educations. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Did you have a positive experience in college relatively recently that you feel prepared you appropriately for life and future jobs? It might help the parents and students who commented on my previous video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye.